Okay, we are going to get started and welcome. My name is Dr. Brad Bongiovanni. I went to Richmond and graduated in 1992, long time ago, many moons ago. And I just want to say I'm excited to be here and thank you for joining us. And I want to say I think I see a special classmate of mine, Whitney Kane Gomez. Hello, Whitney. Nice to see you there. I can't really see you, but you can see me hopefully. All right. Well, today I wanted to talk to you about something that really I don't think there's anything I'm more passionate about than this subject today, well-being. How do we experience well-being? What does it mean when I say the sacred triad? So today let's see. I'm going to cover today here with y'all, what do I mean by well-being? Why does it matter? Again, what that sacred triad looks like, because I think you'll be surprised at what I have in store for you in terms of what that really sacred triumvirate of the foundation of well-being really looks like and really is, and how achievable it really is. So stay tuned, and how we go about engineering that. So just to kind of get us warmed up, if we could go, we're going to have some poll questions for you, just to keep it interesting, make sure we keep you on your toes. And if we could just put up the first poll question, then I'll make sure everyone's comfortable with the polls. Okay, so this is just for fun. Okay, no worries. But what do you think the sacred triad of well-being is? I like football and beer and pretzels. My wife might say Petty Manny and a glass of wine, or my wife, I love her, but she does not love to cook, so she might also choose Grubhub, Uber Eats, and DoorDash. But most of you chose what my mom would be most happy with, which is eat right, exercise, and give a shout out of love to your mom. So, okay, this was just for fun. We will cover the actual sacred triad, I promise you. So we will move on here to a little bit about me first, I think, to give you some context. This picture here is me from a couple years ago, and I have a sort of mischievous look on my face, but what I was experiencing at this time, probably 3-4 years ago now, was a lot of stress. So what you see on that face is a smirk, but it really is a stressful smirk. And I want to tell you how it affected me. I was running my own business, had a small private practice, working days, many nights, and almost all weekends, because I love work. Work is not a problem for me, but running and grinding in a small business, along with some challenges at home with health issues, not my own, but within the family, some financial stress, all with making sure the people I was taking care of, the staff that I had, taking care of my staff, all of it really created a bad situation in terms of stress, and really a pretty significant case of burnout. So this is what happened to me. I still have my hair, thank God, but I was at my sort of rope's end and pulling my hair out. And back in about 2017, I believe it was, I was in London doing a speaking engagement, and a colleague of mine who moved from America to Italy was also speaking there. And she invited me to go. Well, she explained to me that she has now a wellness retreat business in Italy where she lives. And it's all around the Mediterranean diet. Mostly she's an expert in the Mediterranean diet and its influence on cancer, but she had a Mediterranean diet retreat. So in 2018, I took my wife and I onto this vacation. I thought it was going to be interesting. It was more of a healthy type of vacation. And this is a little bit about what we did. We spent the whole week immersed in learning about the Mediterranean diet. And so lots of vegetables, lots of antioxidants, lots of phytochemicals. And we actually got our hands, literally dirty not too dirty as we cooked, but we got our hands dirty metaphorically in that we were in the kitchen learning about healthy meals, having fun, talking, and creating and immersing ourselves, not just informationally about the Mediterranean diet, but really about the experience of the Mediterranean diet. And stay with me because experience is such a key component of what I want to share with you today. So I made some pasta. I made pasta as a kid with my grandma, and this is what we did. We rolled out plastic tablecloth on the kitchen table, and we made this from scratch, right? All raw ingredients. And here's me finally kind of creating the fettuccine that I'm making. And you can see already the beginning of the transition from the left side of your screen, pulling my hair out, to the right side of the screen where I'm beginning to have fun again and just sort of relax and sort of downshift and get myself immersed. So what happened over this week was life-changing in the sense that I got to experience that there really is no Mediterranean diet without a Mediterranean lifestyle. And the Mediterranean lifestyle is probably something you all are familiar with to some degree, but when you experience it, it completely shifted the course of my family's life. By the end of that week of walking, talking, cooking, visiting, laughing, the best word I can describe to sum it all up is savoring, slowing down and savoring. And so this is me. I am Italian, talking with the Maya hens. By the end of the week, do I look relaxed? I mean, do I look like I'm well? Do I look like I'm just, having, just a good existence at that point? I'm drinking my Aperol Spritz. We're about to have dinner. It's the last night that we were in Tuscany. And this really caused a dramatic shift in the experience I had with feeling deep well-being. 6 months later, my wife and I, when we returned, we moved our home. We moved with a lot of intentionality to a place our kids could walk to school, where we could be part of more of a community where there's events, restaurants, cafes, shopping, right within walking distance of our home. We downsized, we simplified, we threw out, we decluttered. We looked at our social, relationships and community and friendships and where we wanted to improve. We did a lot of rethinking about our well-being and how we wanted to recreate that experience of well-being in our actual real lives back here in, the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. So it was a real life changer for me. What I did when I came back is I started thinking about where I wanted my career to go next. So I begun and continued on my evangelist path of evangelizing well-being and on TV. And I did a TED Talk in 2019 at Case Western Reserve. And back in 2016, I went to the Harvard Faculty Club in Boston. And if you have to be over 40, or you're probably not going to know who this guy is, but this is the most interesting man in the world. Not me, him. And it was really fun. We got to share the stage, and he had me and all of us in tears telling us stories of how he became the most interesting man in the world. And 3 years later, 2019, I got to again present with Suzanne Summers. Suzanne, the one thing about presenting at the Harvard Club with Suzanne Summers was she's 74 years old, and she is a walking and talking version of well-being. Not only does she look fantastic, but she really was fantastic. Her energy, her wit, her intelligence. I mean, she is a savvy woman entrepreneur, and could engage and tell stories and entertain us, and super business savvy. And at 74, she was running circles around all of us. So now I really love teaching and evangelizing about how, not just about well-being, because there's a lot of information about it, but how do we go about experiencing it? So before we jump into the meat of what I want to share with you, let's make sure we're level setting sort of some terms here. So let's go to the next poll. I want to ask you, do you think that wellness and well-being are the same thing? Let's see how you all vote here. Votes are coming in. Okay, interesting. Okay, almost everyone has voted. So let's show the results, Mary Alice. Okay, so one vote for yes, absolutely the same, one for totally different, and the most of you voted for well, kind of, sort of. So interesting, because I do not believe that they're the same, and so I'm going to explain why here. I've been in the field for over 25 years, and 25 years ago, wellness was, I think, a little bit more well defined, but today it's become very hip and trendy, right? So your doctors or your insurance companies or your health practices, health systems, they use things. They use the term wellness to describe screenings like mammograms or pap smears or lung cancer screenings as wellness screenings, as an example. It really ruffles my feathers a little bit, because those things are important, but those are not wellness. Those are early detection. Early detection is fantastic, but early prevention might be a little bit better or equally as important. So this concept of wellness, you see it everywhere. People throw it around. It's a big buzzword. But if you really stop and ask yourself, what is the context of the definition where you're seeing it, hearing it, I think you'll soon come to realize it's become so overused, it's hard to know what it really means. So I like well-being. And Gallup is not the only organization, but they are probably a leading organization that studies and does research and reports on well-being. And so they describe well-being as something that's more comprehensive. Of course, it encompasses the physical health, but it also looks at other aspects, your career, your finances, your social health, your community health. These are all aspects of health that cannot be ignored. And we're going to talk about some surprising facts here of where I think we think mostly of well-being physically and sometimes mentally, right, and psychologically, but well-being is much more comprehensive and much more within our reach. And I think intuitively we understand this, but I'm going to make sure we talk about what we're talking about today in terms of well-being. We can get fancy with it, right? But we can also just say it's as simple as feeling good and functioning well across those 5 areas that we just sort of talked about. It's being your best, operating at your potential, feeling productive, feeling creative, contributing, whether that's to your family, at the highest level, to your neighborhood, to your community, to your state, to your nation, to your world, whatever that may be for you. It's you actualizing the best version of yourself and functioning across all these areas at the highest level for you, essentially. So it's not rocket science. It's just feeling your best across all these very important areas. And the Gallup chairman and CEO, Jim Clifton, now he said this in 2014, and so we're still well in the middle of this 20-year prediction. But the most important dial in any leader's dashboard, and I know we have lots of leaders with us on this presentation with us today. If you are UR alumni, you are, I think, almost by definition, a leader. Maybe not 100%, but I'd say 98% if I had to guess. Everyone I know that's an alumnus of or an alumni of Richmond is a leader. And so the most important dial in any leader's dashboard, starting from 7 years ago, according to Jim Clifton, is going to be well-being. And this was obviously pre-pandemic. Now with the pandemic and coming through and hopefully soon to an end of the pandemic, it's only been heightened, that this heightened across big companies, big organizations, and obviously as individuals, the importance of making sure this is something that we're well attuned to and doing everything we can to optimize as we recover. Okay, so, oops, I'm gonna go back here for a second. Mary Alice, let's go to the next poll, because we had a great question that came in before the presentation this morning or this afternoon, depending on how you want to time it. And it's, what is or are the biggest well-being challenges that have emerged with many people going into remote work, right? Since the pandemic began a year ago, and how can we address them? let's see what y'all have to say about this. Okay, interesting. Let's see if we can get one more vote, and then we'll call it. Okay, let's call it. Very good. So, the poll, you can see from the poll, most people, 70%, said all of the above, and I think that's true. You really, essentially, you really can't go wrong. There's no wrong answer here. All of these answers are correct. I wanted to kind of see what your 2 cents was, or your perspective was. I think the biggest one that we see and hear about, at least I do, because I tend to keep my eye and ear attuned to this whole thing, is the impact that this is having on our health and our well-being. But the mental health impact is definitely at the top. But it's hard to separate out some of these factors too. Work-life balance is part of our mental health, and the time management that goes into, when we're working remotely, we might have more time because of less commute time, but the challenges of separating, getting started with work, disengaging from work, re-engaging with other personal life responsibilities, and where self-care sometimes it's easy for self-care to maybe drift in and out of that. So that's impacted. Obviously, we've been physically distanced for the last year, so that's definitely lends itself to feelings of isolation, even as we try to keep connected, digitally and virtually. So really, the answer is, I think all of these challenges have emerged in terms of how the pandemic has affected our well-being. Mental health probably is at the top of the list, and how do we address these things? So stay tuned, because that's what I'm going to cover for the next 20 minutes or so, maybe 15 minutes or so. Why does well-being matter? I'm going to say well-being, it does not matter. Well-being doesn't matter unless you're experiencing it. Because we all know this, we've lived through and in the information age. We can go and inform ourselves about well-being. It's everywhere. About what we can do to feel more well, be more well, live more well. But until we have figured out a way individually, and maybe within our groups, our families, our neighborhoods, our communities, our workplaces, how to experience it, then it doesn't matter. Once we figure out how to experience it, that's where it gets really exciting. How do we experience it? Why does it matter? Because when you experience it, you are going to perform better. You're going to perform better as a parent. You're going to perform better as an employee, as a leader, as an employer. If you're into sports, you're going to perform better as an athlete when you have great well-being. And then the last part of this formula, experience well-being, drive performance, win. Win, I mean at the game of life, at the game of business, however you define winning to be for you. I think that's important. What does that mean for you? But it's experiencing well-being. It's allowing yourself to actualize your grandest potential, and then positioning yourself to win by your own definition. So, like I said, well-being, we have to define what that means for ourselves. This last year has, the Great Reset, the Great Pause. It's been good in the sense that it's forced us to really reflect on what matters to us, right? When the world is in the state that it's been in for the last year, we have to reflect on, what does this mean? What is important to me? What is not so important to me? What do I want to let go of? What do I want to focus on? And everyone's answers will be different, and that's perfectly good. And I think that has to be the way it is. We may not get back to a normal as we once knew it. I think we'll get close once the country is for the most part vaccinated, the world is for the most part vaccinated. But there's been good things that we've learned and that have come out of this that I think will stay. So I don't think we'll go all the way back to our old normal. I think we probably all would agree about that. But where I really feel, because I think, again, I alluded to, I feel like we're all leaders on this call, this presentation right now, and those that may be listening even later. The challenge is, how do we integrate and balance, right? We have to from a business and life perspective, get back to, achieving and hitting our goals and being productive. But how do we balance that pressure with where we all are, with being compassionate and empathetic and caring individuals, and making sure we're inclusive, and making sure there's equity and there's a sense of culture, of belonging again? Those are all necessary, but weaving and integrating those things together is a tall order, a necessary order, but not an easy one. So I really feel for the leaders out there who are trying to manage all of these things together. And what we really need is resilience, and resilience comes from well-being. So I think we're all probably high achievers also on this call, and people in general that enjoy achieving want to get back to achieving again, right? So we have to ask ourselves again what this means to us. How do we define it, and what do we need in order to perform at our best as an individual? Oh, I think we have a poll question. Let's go back. Yeah. Okay, let's go back. Let's go to the next poll here. And I'm curious to see how y'all respond. Which risk factor do you think affects the risk of mortality the strongest? So the risk of death. We've got 4 pretty good choices here. And I think you'll be interestingly surprised when we do discuss what the actual science tells us. So let's see, we've got about 70% of people voting, 75% of people voting. Let's see a few more seconds if we get one more. Okay, let's call it. Oh, we did get one more. Okay, good. So you can see here, half of you essentially picked obesity, and the other half picked basically lack of exercise or a sedentary lifestyle, and one of you picked smoking. So interesting, because I didn't actually give you an option that was the correct option, yes, to be factually correct, there is one option here that is the strongest that we're going to talk about in a minute. But I just wanted to see what you where the group fell. So I'm going to click away from this, and in terms of well-being, we hear a lot about risk factors. We hear about diet, we hear about obesity, we hear about alcohol and drug use, we hear about exercise or lack of exercise, we hear about smoking, the importance of not smoking, and these are important. However, we don't often hear about psychosocial risk factors, factors that affect us psychologically or socially, that I think sometimes because they're considered soft. Maybe sometimes I like to call them soft and fluffy. They're interesting and they're nice, but they're not as rigorous as some of these other very well established, very well known risk factors. And have you asked yourselves why that might be the case? One of my mentors back when I left Richmond and went into medical school was Dr. Andrew Weil. Some of you may recognize him. He kind of looks like Santa. He's since become a household name over the last 20 years with the rise of holistic medicine. Even if you're not familiar with him, he has a great quote. Now, this is a medical doctor who's grew up in the conventional medical system, but now teaches other doctors how to practice more holistic therapies along with conventional therapies. But his fantastic quote is very simple and very profound. We don't really have a healthcare system in this country. We have a disease management system. If you have a disease, our country is very, very good at managing that disease, identifying it, treating it, managing it. But where we're not so good is in the health care system. The care in healthcare is not so great. And the fact of the emphasis on health promotion is not so great. So let's talk about, I think, the 3 pieces of the sacred triad that I'm really excited about and would really get my gets my passion flowing. So you might not have guessed what these were. You can see them here. I want to talk about love. I want to talk about purpose, and I want to talk about connection. Without these, eating well, exercising, sleeping well, managing stress well, they will only get you so far. And there's scientific evidence that I'm going to show you simply that substantiates that. So when I'm talking about love, I'm talking about joy, and I'm talking about feeling alive, and I'm talking about that feeling of being connected to those we love. And there's a hormone that's associated with this that you've probably heard of, oxytocin. And the simple takeaway that I want you to understand is when we are under stress, our body kicks off our stress response, called our HPA, our HPA through our HPA axis, our hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. Our adrenal glands are what produce cortisol, which you've probably heard of. Cortisol is our stress hormone. So our brain perceives stress, our stress response system is kicked off, and we produce cortisol. So oxytocin is the counter to that. Oxytocin counters cortisol, and it downshifts our body's stress response. And we all know that stress, I think we all know, that stress underlies almost every chronic disease. So it's so important to prevent disease and to really promote health, to really make sure that we can do those things that are within our grasp, are within our reach, are within our control to downshift our stress response. So the question I like to ask people is, what are your oxytocin buttons? Meaning, what are those things for your life? Don't look left, don't look right, just look in the mirror. What are those things in your life that make you feel great, alive, just good inside, warm inside, connected? There are things that are generally, interestingly, known to stimulate oxytocin. I mean, cuddling, sex with your partner, but other interesting things too, humming, singing, going on a roller coaster ride tends to stimulate oxytocin. The trick is really knowing what are those things for you that make you come alive and feel great and feel connected and loved and appreciated and just connected. Write those down. Those are your oxytocin buttons. And the trick and the key and my advice to you is to know them for yourself and then to use them in your everyday life. Okay, number 2, purpose. So purpose, I want to tell you that there's a lot of robust research coming out of very reputable centers like Harvard, like University of Michigan. Research in 2017 from Harvard, published in probably the most prestigious psychiatric journal in the world, JAMA Psychiatry, says that purpose in life helps us preserve our physical function as we age. And out of University of Michigan, a stronger purpose in life is associated with longer life, decreased risk for mortality. So this is a biological, this has a biological effect to it. So a lot of times I like to ask my people, my patients, or other friends or family or whatnot, ask your doctor if purpose could be right for you. And then third, before I go off to purpose, this is Dario Caccini. You may or may not know him. He was on the Netflix series Chef's Table. This is part of my experience when I took my wife and I to Tuscany. This is a butcher who has taken his purpose in life, meat, to world-renowned status. And this is his butcher shop. He blares AC/DC. I can still hear AC/DC, You Shook Me All Night Long, blaring in his tiny little, about the size of a one-car garage butcher shop in the heart of Tuscany. And just before I asked him to come over and take this picture, the person's fumbling with the camera. He turns and in my ear, he whispers, meat in Italian. The person snaps the picture and he turns and runs off and is shaking hands and kissing babies with everybody in the store. And this is something simple. You can take anything and make it your purpose. And his sense of aliveness, you can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can sense it, you can experience it. And something I won't forget. Okay, and third of the triad is connection. So I like to ask, will the real vitamin C please stand up? Because we've all heard of vitamin C, but I like to think of vitamin C as the vitamin of connection and the influence of our social connections on our risk for mortality. is more impactful and more influential than any other well-known, well-established risk factor that we all hear about all the time. You don't have to be a scientist to appreciate what's on this graph here. I'm going to walk you through it. There's just one main point. Look at those bars and look at which bars are the biggest or the longest, okay? Because what those bars are measuring is the impact on lowering your risk for death, okay? And you can see, let's see if you can see my cursor here on my mouse. Obesity is over here, important. Exercise, flu shots, alcohol abstinence, smoking cessation, right? All these things that we hear are so important: alcohol, smoking, exercise, obesity. But look at these big bars. This is the most dramatic, most influential impact on our risk for death: social connection. So let's not over focus on those things that are important but not as impactful, and under focus on those things that are the most impactful of all: connection. All right, another poll here. Now, do you all think that our social environment can impact the expression of our genes? We all know our genes are, there are what we're born with, right? We don't have control of our genes. We are born into the world and we have a genetic code. Do you think our social environment is able to impact the expression of those genes? Let's see. Okay, we're at about 60% votes. Let's see if we get a few more. Let's see, we're at almost 65. Okay, let's call it here. Okay, well, 100% of you said yes. And I'm very impressed because that is the correct answer. It is not science fiction. It's not going to be solved with gene therapies. It is the influence of our social environment is one of the ways that our environment affects our genes. And there's an entire field of medicine, which I'm guessing most of you may not have heard of, but you certainly are aware of the influence that our environment can have on our gene expression. There's a whole field of medicine called social genomics. This is research that looks at why and how different social factors affect the activity of our genome. So you can see this graph here. Again, it looks intimidating perhaps, but here's our social environment and here's our perception. So let's say our social environment is socially disconnected. We induce a stress response, right? And then that sends signals and transcription factors which control the expression of our genes. And what research has shown, and when we are disconnected, our gene expression is affected and we produce more pro-inflammatory chemicals and proteins, essentially. And the opposite is true when we are socially connected. So this is biology. This is not just airy fairy, wouldn't it be nice if we were more connected? And this is basic science down to the activity of our genome and the way our genome controls our protein and then obviously our immune systems. So social connection is extremely important and extremely impactful. And this is really the point that I want you to walk away with. So as a naturopathic doctor trained in natural medicine, it's a little bit of almost heresy for me to say this, but I really believe that for a long and healthy life full of well-being and freedom from disease, it's not about so much the food and the exercise and the supplements and what's happening with your gut microbiome and your genetic code that we can measure. Those things are important, very, very important, but are they the most influential? And science tells us that really love and purpose and connection are more influential medically than how much you weigh, what you're addicted to, how much you exercise. So the wonderful thing about love, purpose, and connection as risk factors is they're the best kind of risk factors. They're modifiable. We can control them. So how do we do it? Well, we don't have a lot of time today to go through the in-depth steps, but I'll just sort of let you know. It all starts with what I call going deep, DEEP. D is for define. Define for you what well-being means in all those areas. What does it mean physically, financially, career-wise, socially, community-wise? How can I start engineering more well-being into my life? Once you do those two things, you can expect to start experiencing more well-being, and you can expect to perform at a higher level, however you wish to perform. And then that sets you up to win, again, by your own definition. So we're running a little bit out of time, but I did have some slides that I'll maybe try to run through very quickly about there is a business case to be made, because I know a lot of you are business leaders, for well-being. This is research showing basically almost a 700% increase in revenue from companies that have a performance enhancing culture. So culture actually has a financial impact. You can expect gains for well-being beyond just revenue in terms of a culture of belonging, which leads to maybe lower turnover rates, higher productivity, decreased healthcare costs, higher client satisfaction. And there is really a high cost to low employee well-being. You can see people with the lowest well-being scores averaged about the cost of about $28,000 a year in sick days, whereas the people with the highest well-being scores had only about just under $1,000 per year of sick days. And an incredible report out of BetterUp in 2019 came out showing and quantifying the value of high belonging at work. And what they showed was there's a 56% increase in job performance, a 50% drop in turnover risk, and a 75% drop in sick days when there's this high sense of belonging. And for a 10,000 person company, that's about an annual savings of over $50 million. Anne Mulcahy, former CEO of Xerox, says that when employees believe that management cares about them, they're more satisfied. More satisfied employees lead to more satisfied customers. More satisfied customers lead to more profitability. The software giant, SAP, they have an actual doctor, head of global health and well-being, whose main purpose is to help not just to pretend about employee well-being being this nice to have. It actually helps SAP become a more successful company. So there are there are a few of these. What's now this new role in the C-suite, the Chief Wellbeing Officer, and we have a chief fill in the blank officer for money, for strategy, for HR, for marketing, for operations. But soon there will be another title sharing that space in the C-suite, a Chief Wellbeing Officer, someone to take care of the well-being of its people as a driver of performance for them and for the organization. There's a few people that are leading the way here already, having Chief Wellbeing Officers: Deloitte, SAP, Novant Health, Kirkland & Ellis, a gigantic law firm, and even colleges and universities like Arizona State has a Chief Wellbeing Officer. And I'm really so proud of the University of Richmond for finally opening their well-being center. And wellness and well-being is not a building; it's learning. It's a holder of space for you all to learn, and to the students now on campus to learn how to be our own Chief Wellbeing Officers by some of the things that we've talked about here today. The pandemic has forever changed things. We know this, but it's also given us an opportunity as we all reflect on what matters most to sort of weave in, how does this affect our career, our life purpose, our purpose with our family, our communities, our organizations, and how do we make sure we have resilience now to continue to bounce back and stay bounced back as we recover. So last poll, let's throw it up real quick. And basically all I have for you are brownie points. But if you get the answer correctly, then you will have a special spot in my heart. So this is sort of the end of our time together. And I want to just know, are you hearing me clear enough? What movie is this from? Let's go 5 more seconds. See if anyone, oh my goodness gracious, I love all of you. Okay, Mary Alice. Look at that. Wow, I am so impressed. I am so impressed. That Rudy is my favorite movie. I'll just share that. My family makes fun of me. I don't understand. I don't know how they don't understand, but I'm very impressed that all of you got that. So a couple of quick things to finish this up here. Well-being is evolving. It's going to be self-defined, intentionally engineered, and ultimately has to be experienced. The benefits are personal and professional and organizational, and the foundation must be built on top, or the well-being must be built on top of a foundation of love and purpose and connection, especially. And the science is very clear that it drives performance, success, health, personally and professionally and organizationally. And I want to say thank you. This crazy group of guys right here, I want to also give a shout out to the culture of Richmond, even 30 years ago, because these guys you see here are University of Richmond, 1992. And I do actually literally get by with a little help from my friends. And these are my friends. Whitney, if you're still with us, you'll recognize many of these faces. But 30 years later, and I still have friendships that mean the world to me and that literally help me, basically through the ups and downs and trials and tribulations and successes and failures of life and all of its roller coaster ride. And so I just am blessed that I had these guys with me along the way 30 years ago, and 30 years later, we're still just as tight as ever, maybe more tight. I thank you. I don't know if we have time for questions. I'll let Mary Alice let me know if there are questions and how much time we may have to cover some of those. Okay, so let's see. If you have questions, then I think you're supposed to put them in either the question box or the chat box. I think the question box. And if there are no questions, we'll wait a minute or two. I'm happy to just see if anyone has any questions. And hope you learned something. This was fantastic. I think I'm going to be back again, and I'm going to bring another Richmond graduate with me next time. And we're going to keep the conversation going. And I think we're going to do that on Earth Day next month. So we're going to just try to keep things alive. Okay, thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that. And it doesn't look like there's questions, so I must have done a fantastic job. Thank you for joining us. I do hope you learned something. Go Spiders. And you can look for me and another Richmond 92 alumnus next month, where we're going to continue the conversation. Have a great Friday and have a great weekend. And ask yourself what well-being means for you. That's the first step. Have a great day. Bye-bye.